Hello and welcome to the first edition of the Eastern Canadian, where we discuss politics, social issues, and such. And my first guest, I was very lucky to have the mayor of the city of Dieppe in New Brunswick, Mr. Yvon Lapierre. Good morning.
Good morning. What an honor.
Yeah, you're the first one to you're christening the ship here.
There you go.
So, yeah, let's start the discussion. I have noticed that there's been many new buildings appearing in your city in recent years, including close to City Hall, hotels and commerce and such, new stadium restaurants. How is Dieppe doing from all this? We could gather that things are going well, but we're wondering about the challenges as well, of course.
Yeah. Well, as far as when things got started, really, you have to go back to probably the early 2000. This has been going on. Some people sometimes are surprised that they haven't followed what's been happening in Dieppe, but essentially, for the past 20 years, we started developing our downtown, and everybody thought we were a bit crazy of even thinking about that. And we went through a process of acquiring properties around the space that people would now recognize as the Place 1604 or Place 1604, and which is of course quadrilatère or block that covers from the Rue du Marché, Market Street, and Champlain Street, and of course Acadia Avenue. So within that space, over a period of time, beginning again in the year 2000, we started acquiring properties to create the downtown, and I'm pretty happy about it. And I was mayor at that time, and I was pretty happy to see that we were able to do that, expropriating essentially 29 properties, and we did it without having to go to court to do that. We did have
Wonderful.
some pushback.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did
not
have.
getting the lawyers involved is usually a good idea.
Well, the group from the excuse me, the Economic Development Commission of the app, the staff was instructed to where we would have differences with the owners of the land or the properties, that we would, if we're going to give extra money to anybody, we'll give it to the people that we're disturbing, the people that were, it's more than an inconvenience when you're asking people to leave house and property where they've been or their family has been for quite a number of years, and say, hey, here's a deal for you. But just as the community was growing everywhere else as well, going to Saint-Anselme area, to Lakeburn, even what we know as the old Dieppe, everything was really booming. So, and Chartersville area, of course, is another one. So
Definitely.
yeah, since we were accommodating people or disturbing them, we thought it was the right thing to do, and proud to say that we did acquire 29 properties to create that space, which was a big kickoff to the development of our downtown, particularly with the market. So yeah, things have been moving fast. At that time, it was fast and furious, as I like to say. For staff and for council, yeah, things were moving quite fast. Were we perfect? No. Did we make mistakes? Yes. But overall, not too much damage to the finances of the city, or was not a city then, was a town. Since
really?
been, has since been reclassified as a city. At that time, when I go back to the year 2000, the population was probably around 12,000 people. And of course, we have since more than doubled that, probably 2.5 times now as a population.
Was it because we expanded the limits of the city, or is it because people moved in the city more, or both?
We did not expand the limits of the city. That's going to be happening. In fact, this year, because of the changes to the provincial legislation and the
Municipalities Act and such. Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Well,
So
breaking news on the podcast, guys. Dieppe is
yeah,
expanding physically.
physically, yeah. So no, there was a lot of. I mean, there was a lot of land that was available at that time.
Mhm.
When you drive out to on Acadia Avenue and into Saint Anselme area, there was a lot of opportunities there, and of course, another big factor was the development of the Dieppe Boulevard, right?
Mhm.
So where the golf course Fox Creek was
Yeah.
developed. So again, in that area, we had developers that believed in what we were doing and that invested everything from the what is now the IGA grocery store,
Mhm.
the aquatic center, and everything moving down to Boulevard Dieppe. So there's like I said, it was fast and furious.
Yeah, that area has seen a lot of development. I know that place where the IGA is from personal experience has it's
Mhm.
kind of a tiny village if I could consider there's a gym, there's restaurant. It's really like boomed all of a sudden. That was really interesting.
And more to come.
Interesting. Nice. So yeah, I know the area as well where the golf course is. That's a really beautiful area. I see some new buildings coming in as well. So that's really interesting.
Yep.
So, speaking of challenges, though, it seems like the problem of crime has been a reality in Dieppe too. And I'm not discriminating against Dieppe specifically because it's been growing in Moncton, it's been growing in Fredericton, St. John, and probably other cities in other provinces as well. How's the city reacting to this, and what measures are being used to not only remedy the situation, but maybe alleviate why it's happening in the first place?
Well, obviously, there's been a lot of discussion with the RCMP, who is the police force that is covering our city as well as the city of Moncton and the town of Riverview,
Yeah, just
as
to
part of
clarify to viewers, if they're not from Moncton
yeah.
Review Dieppe, basically we do not have a municipal police in those areas. It's the RCMP that's been contracted to become the municipal police, basically.
Right. Ever since 1998, I believe, is the
It's
rate
been
is
it's been a
when
few decades,
it,
yeah.
yeah. And we're generally happy, obviously, with the service that we're getting. I mean, after all, the RCMP is a federal force, so they have
Mhm.
access to a lot of infrastructure. But yes, the area specifically, I can't speak for Moncton,
Mhm. No, of course.
but certainly here in Dieppe, we've had what I call crime of opportunities, where
Mhm.
people leave their garage door open or don't lock up their cars, and we've seen a
Mhm.
lot of that, particularly at the mall. But even in private, more small wards, or you
Mhm.
know some part of the cities where it's been that are close to the main streets, particularly. We've seen in what we call Old Dieppe in particular, we've had a surge back a few months ago, but it's pretty much under control now. But we all know what it's about. It's about drugs and the drug trade, and drug
Mhm.
addicts trying to find some money. And as I said, it's often crimes of opportunity. A lot of
Mhm.
small break and enters, but most of the break and enters, you don't need to break anything, because we're a
Yeah.
small community, and it's only one generation uh, and probably less than 10 years ago when I started locking my doors. I live on Chartersville Road and been there since 1977. And I've only started locking my front door and back door maybe 10 years ago. So, there was all that.
And I mean, as the
Yeah,
city
yeah,
grows as well, like it comes with a lot of great things, but also some inconveniences.
right.
Mostly if and that's why I was talking about why it's happening, like to remedy why it's happening, because there has been a lot of reports of like street drugs and such in Moncton and Dieppe, and I know that Moncton is considering some new strategies to deal with the issue, a bit more on the human side instead of like just the prosecuting side. Is Dieppe considering anything similar? Is there any programs in place that our viewers would like to know about? Is there anything you can tell us?
Well, I'll speak to one program that we've had in place for more than 20 years. And we've had what we call a street worker. And I don't mean a hooker, okay? But we've had a street worker working social, social involvement that that's always been here for the past 20 years, almost 25 years now. Not the same person, obviously, but a social worker that's been very active in the community, particularly with young people. So, to some degree, we've been able to avert, a more serious situation, particularly, combination of high schools, community college. It obviously attracts drug dealers because they see opportunities, potentially. So those things we've kept a good eye on, solid eye on for a number of years and a couple of decades now. And I think we've benefited from that as a community. But obviously, we also know that, we've had some major events, crimes that we suspect are associated to also to the drug trade and people's drug habits. So it's a major. It's not an easy solution, but I'm particularly proud of that effort that we've had in place, as I said, for more than 20 years with the social worker working the streets, working with young people specifically in and around Mathieu Martin High School and the community college, and our youth house, Maison de la Jeunesse, which is adjacent to the high school. So I don't have my head in the ground and forget to look at or not look at the reality. But the reality is that it's a social problem. It's an urban problem.
It is,
and it's
a
not
problem
easy.
of our times,
And
definitely.
it's a problem of our times. As you grow, like you said in your intro, as we grow, there's things that there's not just good things that come. There's a few bad things that come along, and it's you can't put your your head in the sand and forget about it.
Definitely not. And that's why I was so interested with how Moncton is not doing, but considering doing, treating the problem. A bit like Vancouver and other much bigger areas with safe injection site and actual counseling on location and such. Is that something that Dieppe is open to the idea of considering the science on this, or is the current approach pretty much like what the city is only interested in right now?
I don't think we're there. I don't think we're there in terms of implementing a program, but we're certainly keeping an eye on what's happening with our neighbors as they're moving into injection safe injection places. So it's certainly something that we're monitoring with the help of our neighbors.
It's definitely worth looking into for the future, but honestly, at the moment, they're not even like at the executing phase. It's just basically thinking about potential solutions. So I'm happy that you're keeping an open mind about this.
Well, it's we just look at what's been happening in as you've mentioned, in British Columbia specifically, but also now in Ontario, in the greater Toronto area, Montreal. So everybody is. It seems like it's an alternative to keep people alive, and perhaps eventually they change the course of their life. So
I do believe, like when I looked at the science of it a little bit, it's more about giving them a safe place to actually be able to get out of the situation, because if they have to go back to the person that's supplying them, that person's making money, so they have no will to actually help them stop, because that's basically how they make money. But if we're looking at the government trying to help them at the same time, it could work. But that is all that's being spoken about, like in the scientific circles and social sciences right now, from as far as I can tell.
the biggest benefit is that it keeps them alive. What
I
they
would say that as
what
well.
they get what they get in those programs in terms of drugs is not something that's going to kill them. So which maybe is a difference with what's happening with the
Hmm.
criminal side of it, where people are diluting the product or adding you know
Fentanyl is the
substance. Exactly,
most
exactly.
worrying.
That's a great example. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. So, switch of topic here, COVID-19, as if we could dodge the topic, right? It must have been quite a challenge for the city. I imagine mostly that the airport is in your jurisdiction, the malls in your jurisdiction as well. Can we talk about a success story for Dieppe about dealing with the pandemic and what went well? What, like, if it was to redo again, what would we change, for example?
Well, like most communities, we moved quickly, and the initial lockdowns, we were very, we just didn't take any chances. We know of communities that maybe did not go as far as we did, and
Mhm.
they've been impacted more. It was like closing a facility like our new Uniplex, which is a major recent development in our city, about 2 years old, the building, and we keep we keep pushing back our official opening
Official
because of
opening.
COVID. We
Yeah,
haven't had.
yeah.
Uh, I mean, it will be. Well, it's 2 years that it's open, that the building is open, but we've been living with COVID in and out of that building, whether it's with uh, outhouse where people are growing all kinds of green stuff, and whether it's our meeting rooms, our training rooms, or the two ice surfaces, hockey ice surfaces, and and I say hockey, but I mean all ice.
All live sports,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, all ice sports, and including public, and of course the track up above on the third floor, walking track, not walking trail, but walking track. So I mean, I'm a user of both, the walking track and the ice. I still play some hockey, and or at least
Mhm.
uh, go skating once in a while. So it's something that everybody was looking forward as a community, but with COVID, it's been up and down and up and down. So it creates a problem with staff. With scheduling, the aquatics. When we think about the aquatic center, for example, is one of the major facility that's been up and down and adjustments. When you're talking about people going to undress and put a bathing suit on and then come back in, so there's scheduling issues so that people don't cross paths. So rerouting people around where we can, or just simply closing the place down. So it's been a big challenge for staff, major impact on our revenues, major impact on events, public events, and community development. As I like to say, we're very big on public events and community development, particularly now that we have, for the past 10 years, more and more people immigrating to our region and into our city. And, our public space in 1604 is, is an active place, or was an active place, but now we have to pull back, in terms of our Mercredi show, Wednesday night show during the summer period of 9 weeks, where we would have arts and cultural events, and that brings people together. And it's an opportunity for newcomers to meet new people and whatnot. So the whole aspect of the development of our community, our arts and cultural center, has been impacted greatly as well for the same thing, traffic. How do you control the traffic? Cleaning the place and whatnot. So it's difficult on staff. It's difficult on council as well, because we're getting hammered from all sides. How come? And when people do comparisons, right? So they say, well, how come they can do this in Memram Cook, and which is only
You have
maybe
much less
10 kilometers,
population as well, you know?
yeah, 10 kilometers away. and sometimes Moncton does things differently than we do, and the same with the entire southeast region essentially. So people like to compare, and we don't always come out as a shining star because we're being too tough. But when I look at the numbers and I look at the occurrences where things have happened, where events have taken place, where there's been a big blow up of
Cases, yeah.
COVID, I think we don't look too bad when you
No,
start
but
looking at I look at it almost daily basis,
mhm.
and I see where events have occurred where where they say, hey, if you've been there, you should get yourself tested and so on. I'm pretty proud of our community and how people have reacted so far. And I say so far because we all know people are getting tired.
No,
Just
definitely. And when you said like the center's been open for 2 years, but it hasn't even had an official launch, I thought 2018. Wow. Oh, wait a second. It's 2022. It's like the time has just melted for 2 years. So it's like
exactly.
I understand that people are getting tired. I'm getting tired myself of everything, but I do understand why we're doing it at the same time. Um, what I wanted to
Question.
ask as well. Oh, sorry.
It's a question of balance, and
Yeah.
it's hard to find your balance with all the continuous changes, even
Hmm.
with even with the government changing the different levels on an ongoing basis. We
Hmm.
started out with colors, and now we're into numbers, and and it just keeps shifting. So it's hard for people to keep track. And for us, we're in direct contact, obviously, with the province. We usually get a heads up before they go public on TV. We usually get a heads up of maybe an hour before, just so that we have an opportunity to react, because often
Hmm.
enough, the changes happen on a Thursday or Friday. So again, it impacts staff because we're 24/7 operation.
And you have to adapt pretty fast to it. So first we learned our colors, then our numbers. I assume next we're going to learn our letters.
Who knows?
uh, yeah, but one of the questions I had is, for example,
Mhm.
like you have the airport here, and airports are usually a federal jurisdiction in a municipal area. Did the city have any ways of controlling what's going on in the airport? Because of course, if people are coming from a COVID hotspot, the federal government seemed okay with some travel, mostly if it was for emergencies or for health staff coming to help and such. But did the city have any way to kind of have a control on that and to make sure that COVID wasn't like entering the city too openly?
We didn't have any control per se, obviously, because it's a federal responsibility.
Hmm.
But I must compliment our staff at the airport,
Oh,
with whom
absolutely.
we've always had a good relationship. And there's a board of civilian people that are that serve as a board of director, and we and an excellent general manager who is leaving us very soon, as he's
No.
retiring. Maybe another victim of COVID, perhaps to some degree, in terms of all the jumping around up and down.
Oh yeah,
But
definitely COVID has
yes,
sped up some retirements, that's for sure.
it's precipitated a lot of retirements. I think, because I keep hearing from friends, that they're retiring, or people that I know well that they're retiring, and that's a good example at the airport right now. So yeah, but they've done a great job controlling things. Again, when somebody flies in from Toronto or Calgary, and they end up here, and they test positive, obviously it impacts everybody that was on that flight, and everybody has to be checked and so on. So
Hmm.
but they've done a remarkable job at the airport. They were a little slow out of the gate, I'll say, but it didn't take too long after one or two exposures that they said, "Whoa, this is really serious." Because everybody had that reaction initially, you know. Yeah, it's okay, it's important, yeah, but at the end of the day, maybe in general, people didn't pay as much attention at the very beginning.
Hmm. No, for sure. And it was an adaptation mostly that I actually personally lost my job when it all started, and I was only in position for 2 weeks. Then they're like,
Oh,
"Well, you're going home." So
mm,
that luckily the federal government like really acted fast to make sure nobody was going to go hungry or
mm,
lose what they have.
mm.
But yeah, definitely it was an adaptation at first to mostly if in transportation. That's for sure. I know Via Rail almost ceased all operations overnight. That must have been a really big deal as well.
And it was the same thing with all the other transport. Buses.
Hmm.
You cut. First, it was no, zero, and then it was like, okay, 25%. You know,
Yep.
fifty percent.
And
So
I've
that's
seen
where we're
some
at right
routes
now.
on
So
weekends as well in Dieppe that
completely
have
canceled. Yeah.
either canceled or just like on weekends on call. Basically, you have to call to say you want to drive, and then they'll come on schedule, but they won't come unless you call. Things like that that had to be adapted to make sure that you weren't just wasting gas at this point, I assume.
A- Actually, that's the future.
Ah,
Actually, that's the future. That's our objective in the app. Is that if people require public transportation, it will be driven by a software that we're currently testing and have been testing for the past 3 months, and made some adjustment and so on. But the future of public transportation, I think, for small communities like, sure, we
Lake
have the
Burn
title of
area.
city, where we have the title of city, but
Mhm.
we're still a very small
You have
city of
small
30.
little edges there, like Lake Burn area,
Right.
the other areas you were talking about earlier as well, Saint
Yeah,
Anselme.
Dover, out in Saint Anselme, Dover. When you get past Saint Anselme, we get into Dover. So you have to adjust, and we've been
Mhm.
testing this system for probably 3 to 4, maybe 5 months at the most. It's a Yeah, it's a software that people can you know, load up on their phone, and you know book a pickup. So, and
Basically, like
they
at the airport, you're at the airport and you need public transit to make it to, say, downtown. You would be
we're
able
not
to.
we're not at the airport yet.
Okay.
That's a bigger one, because what we're testing right now, in fact, is an electric bus that has room for, I think there are 15 people, plus or minus two. There, I could be an error, but it's a
Mhm.
small electric bus that we're using right now. So that's what we're testing the system with, and hopefully we'll grow from that. And yeah,
Oh, that's really
that's
great.
why.
And
That way, well, that way, like you said, you're not you know burning gas and or excessive amount
electricity, if it's an
bus
electric bus, yeah.
electricity. Yeah, even if it's an electric bus, which we have the first one right now. So and it's a small one for testing
Wonderful.
purposes. So,
Number one. I know that there's new battery technology coming probably in the next 2 to 3 years. So that's going to be a really interesting file to follow as everything moves along. Apparently, like a lot less like battery user. Like basically, it like within a year you're at 80% maximum capacity, etc.
yeah, well, that's a big change that's coming. In fact, reading yesterday an article that there's a lot of investments going into Quebec right now, because Quebec, with all their hydropower, of
Hmm.
course, but it also creates opportunities for recycling batteries and bring them up to, as you said, what will then be not 100% capacity, but maybe refurbishing them to an 80% capacity, so that you can recycle
Still using.
the lithium, which is, of course, lithium is
Not
is
exactly.
this century's gold.
Mhm.
So
Lithium sulfur seems to be what's coming. So I really can't wait to
mhm.
see if that's really, apparently it charges a lot faster. It keeps its charge for
Yep,
much longer. So yeah, definitely something that will be useful for electric transportation in cities and villages, I assume.
yep, as we move forward. Yeah.
Now, if only the province would move a little away from fossil fuels for charging those batteries, that'd be great too. But that's another debate.
That's another debate.
um, the housing crisis does not discriminate in New Brunswick. Dieppe's been hit as well, and I'm not saying that Dieppe's alone in this. Pretty much every city in the country is dealing with this right now. And there doesn't seem to be any leadership coming from Fredericton on people getting their rents like skyrocketing all of a sudden. It's happened mostly in St. John, a little bit in Moncton, I assume. First of all, is the city aware of this issue? Because it's been in the newspaper. I assume you guys have read them as well. And since it's out of reach for many to be able to afford even a house, let alone an apartment sometimes, is there anything done to help or anything done to limit the damages in some cases, or what's going on with Dieppe?
Yeah, well, what's going on with Dieppe, from our perspective, we know it's been a problem, and it's a growing problem in our communities. And I say communities. We're a member of the Cities Association of New Brunswick, and it's a very active file within the City Association to lobby, and we are lobbying the provincial government to reduce that double taxation issue. That's a debate in many ways.
Yeah, the double taxation, definitely. That's unique to New Brunswick, that's for sure.
Right, that's right. It's unique to New Brunswick, so that's something we need to continue to lobby the government. And I think I know it's a difficult decision for them to make, but at some point, I believe it's going to become, it already is a very sensitive issue, but it's not going to get better unless there's action taken.
That's why leadership is so important, yeah.
Right, and we continue to build or get building permits and issue building permits for more apartment blocks, and but not every boomer, because that seems to be the trend right now. Baby boomers are moving into apartment buildings, selling their home that they've probably had for anywhere from 30 to 40 years or less, and moving into apartments and new. So that kind of raises the price, because they've got pockets full of money with maybe 20 years of life left, right? So they're spending a little extra money to be nice and cozy in a new apartment building, but that does not help. People are coming out of our universities and just starting jobs, and so it's a very sensitive issue, and
often student loans as well when you're leaving
right,
university.
Exactly. So you combine all that together, there's not much left for housing, and it is a problem. So we're lobbying. We're talking with developers. There's we know. We've seen what's happened in British Columbia, specifically Vancouver, the city, with small, allowing people now to have in their backyard to have a smaller home, secondary home for whether it's a member of the family or not, small lots, smaller homes, small housing. There's room for all of that at some point in time, and maybe we're getting closer and closer every year to that point in time where we need to be more original, more
innovative.
Open. Yeah, innovation will have a lot to do with it as time goes on, but it's growing every year, obviously, and we're very, very conscious of it. But what's the best solution on long term?
It's not an easy fix either, but what I've seen is that rents can be anywhere from $1,100 to $1,600, $1,700. Most often it is way above what you should spend on rent. If you look at median incomes, like it's way above like the 25 or 33% you should pay for rent. And it keeps going up. Like people from Dieppe have told me that sometimes they're seeing like $10 a year, which is not that much, but then 35, because if companies have to pay a little more, then they want to recuperate those losses. So they're raising rents, which is already high. And there's no regulation. There's no ways to mediate that. So definitely, like, I can see a lot of problems coming in the future for living in a city. And I'm talking in a city. No, I'm not talking specifically about Dieppe because this is all over the
Right.
place. But definitely for, I want to say my generation, I'm not that young, but
Mhm.
for my generation, like owning a house is almost out of the question, or even staying in apartments seems to be like, I can't accumulate enough savings to actually for a rainy day kind of deal. So
Yeah.
definitely, that's what I hear across the board from almost every generation right now. Uh, that's a big problem from what I understand. And I'm glad that it's on the cards, but I still wanted to express like what the reality that people are living in the cities. And I say cities again, because I don't want to
Right.
single out Dieppe.
Yeah. No, it's look, it's I think the government's going to have to do something to control rents and control
Mhm.
rent increases. Particularly the cases where people get a very high percentage increase to their rent uh, for so-called renovations. And
Mhm.
does one match the other? Is
Yeah,
the level of improvement that's being made, does it match the dollars? And I think there needs to be an agency that looks into that, and for which landowners, not landowners, but apartment builders need to be held accountable for by the provincial government. It's within their purview, and we are laid. As I said, we're lobbying them on that very
mhm.
topic.
And of course, like there's also external investors that come here. I assume in Dieppe it's not a lot of American companies or European companies, but that's been a problem in bigger cities. Is there something in place in Dieppe like that we make sure that those people aren't coming here as just like an investment to basically cash in on the market that's pretty much going up right now?
We don't see a lot of outside. It's mostly local people.
Hmm.
I mean, we've dealt with some companies from Ontario,
Hmm.
uh, usually pension plan companies that are investing. And if you're running a pension plan fund, you're thinking long term. You're not thinking short term,
Yeah,
right? Um, that changes the way of thinking and the way of doing things. So, but generally, that's the only outsiders that we've seen, and it's from Ontario. In terms of the apartment sector, in terms of single dwelling houses, it comes from everywhere. It comes from everywhere on the planet. We see people from India. We see people from Vancouver. We see people from Ontario. We see people from Alberta moving back home after working for a number of years in the oil fields of Alberta. Yeah, we see people from the north moving to the south of the province.
yeah, definitely.
That's been ongoing for about 15, 20 years now. And obviously, because of the francophone aspect of our community, we've been able to encourage and attract people when they come to this region to move to Dieppe, and that's why Dieppe back in the early '90s declared itself a francophone city that offers services in both official languages.
Definitely, that was a good move. From what we can see, it's grown since then. And for employment, Dieppe seems to be in a good place right now. Retail, shipping, education, many more categories. I'd like to hear about how the city is doing in regards to employment, and also the minimum wage seems to be going up according to the provincial government. And there doesn't seem to be any bylaws in the city itself. So the minimum wage from the province will be the new standard. Is Dieppe welcoming this new legislation, for example? And is there any plans of reacting to it or?
Well, obviously, when a year ago the premier announced that it was going that the
The
minimum
five
wage was
cents?
going up by a nickel. Uh,
I
Needless
mean,
to say,
I mean, a penny was going to
uh,
be way too low, but a dime, I mean, come on, right?
but fortunately, they've corrected their error,
Mhm.
you know,
We'll call
under
it
the
that.
circumstances. Yeah. Everybody's allowed the mistake or two, but
Of course.
yeah. So yeah, so again, that's a federal, excuse me, a provincial responsibility,
Mhm.
and they have the ownership of that. Would we want to have the ownership of that? Not sure. Really haven't given that a whole lot of thought. But obviously, we know, for example, that we have employers that have a hard time to find people at the minimum wage. I'm talking the mall. It's hard to find people, especially where most employers in our community expect the employee to be bilingual, French and English. So
That too.
a lot of those jobs. A lot of those people end up going to the call centers because it's an advantage for them, and or the banking system. Anybody that larger companies like banks and whatnot that
Yeah.
have a public face interface with the public, obviously they're prepared to pay more money for somebody that's bilingual, and that puts a lot of pressure on people like Cadillac Fairview at the mall, and all the stores that are there. And sometimes we get complaints about not people not being able to get served in French, but that's the reality that we're living in. So it's it's difficult for those companies to manage. The bigger employers obviously have a lesser problem because they've got much bigger business and much more revenue to count
Better
on in
pocket
order to.
linings. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's but yeah, we're
But that's
we
something I
also, of
didn't.
course,
Hmm?
we also have a lot of our citizens that work for the provincial and federal government, so that those are more stable, better paying jobs in general. Um,
That
so
too.
that's a good draw. We are central as a tri-community region, and the whole southeast of New Brunswick has been really kind of we're creating a lot of jealous people, we'll say, in the rest of the province, because we've been cooperating very well, particularly the three big communities, but overall the whole southeast, whether you go from Port Elgin all the way to Petitcodiac and everybody east of that to the water, and moving up north to again as far as probably Rishibuktu, we're all working together very well to improve things, and bring employers to the area and create jobs and keep working with the universities, whether it's Mount A or Université de Moncton or I forget now. I'm going blank on the other two universities, but
I think
so
nursing for UNB and what's the other one? I'm blanking as well.
yeah. So, but we have a lot of opportunities for people to move here, and once they set their roots here, obviously, as we have seen when the community college, the Dieppe Community College, when that came about 25, almost 30 years ago now, when that happened, it's I think it's closer to 25 than 30 though. But anyway, again, it brought some people from all over the province, francophones, that wanted to study in all the technologies, and study in French. So that brought people from everywhere down here, and obviously they, eventually graduated, got a job, became couples become families, and
Families, yeah.
families want to build houses, and once they have houses, then they have kids. Next thing you know, the grandparents now from the rest of the province are missing their grandchildren and their children, so they start thinking about moving here, and then that's where all the apartments are coming from, as a big chunk of it over at the beginning. So it's a process, takes time, years and years and years. I've been sitting around the council table off and on because my professional work has taken me out once in a while,
Mhm.
out of the region. But since 1986, with 1986, I was first elected to council as a young father of three kids. The oldest was 10 years old when I ran for council. And like I said, off and on, I've been active in municipal affairs and mayor since 1998, again, off and on, because my professional work took me out of the country, but came back in retirement and still having fun doing it and watching the community grow and working at it. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It still is a lot of fun.
It sounds like there's mostly with COVID and everything that's going on lately, it's not going to be boring, that's for sure.
Well, it's not slowing us down any, that's for sure. We've had a record year last year again for building permits. It's the third year in a row. We had $102 million worth of building permits. Building permits don't always reflect the value of or the evaluation of tax later on, because let's face it, if you're building something, you're going to lowball the amount that you're going to have to pay for your building permit, right? So the reality becomes something different and usually higher. So yeah, I see a very bright future yet for Dieppe and the entire southeast of the province.
That's wonderful to hear. That brings us to the conclusion of the show. We thank you very much for being our first guest on the show. And I wanted to leave you a space at the end if you have anything to say to our guests.
No, I think what I just said about the growth of the Southeast region, I'm very, very, very proud and happy about how all our communities are working together and improving. And I hope we all know what the pitfalls are. We recognize that, and we'll continue to work to correct them. But there's only so much that we can do as a community. But whatever we can do, we will do to continue to improve people's lives.
Wonderful.
Thank you for your time.
Definitely happy to have you on, and that was said like a great politician. I'm sure you're well in place.
I'll say this about that. I've never considered to be a politician, because guys, I've never belonged to any specific political party, and I've been asked by every political party to run for office, and I'm a community worker. That's what I have in my heart. And that's why I'm saying I'm not a politician. I work for my community. I'm a community worker. My background in education is in recreation, so I'm a people person, and will continue to be as long as I can.
That's good to hear. You didn't find politics find you, and usually that makes for great leaders.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day, and thank you. And this concludes our podcast for today. Thanks for listening.